Hi everyone, I'm Betty Doo and I am one of the Midlands mentors this year. So I am a civil servant, so I joined the civil service as part of the civil service fast stream, which is quite a well-known grad scheme, which maybe you've all heard of. But I joined the fast stream straight after graduating uni back in autumn of 2018 now. So I've been on kind of 3 different postings during my time here as part of the scheme, and I've actually kind of graduated off it now. So I passed my final assessment a couple of months ago, and I'm soon going to be moving on to my kind of first permanent role. But as part of the civil service fast stream, I spent 1 year working in Birmingham in the Ministry of Justice. I spent my 2nd year in London working in the Cabinet Office, and my 3rd year again in London, although working remotely due to the pandemic, working in NHS Test and Trace as part of Department of Health and Social Care to help with the UK's response to the pandemic. And as I mentioned, I've graduated off the fast stream now, so actually within the next few days I'm going to be starting my first permanent grade 7 role in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, again in their London office. So that's a quick introduction to myself. So the next question is, what do you do in your day-to-day job? So as I mentioned, I'm currently working for NHS Test and Trace to really help with the UK government's response to COVID-19. So NHS Test and Trace, we manage all the kind of symptomatic and asymptomatic COVID-19 testing in England. We also deliver and coordinate kind of most of the tracing services, and we support with self-isolation. So within that, I sit within the strategy unit in the department, and basically what we do is, I guess it's in the name, but we kind of provide strategic direction across the business to make sure that everything is aligned and everything has a clear vision for what our kind of delivery is over the course of the response. But specifically, I lead on what we call people and access to testing within the strategy team. So basically thinking about how we can make our service more accessible for either groups who are currently underrepresented in the service, so our service isn't being able to engage with them, or trying to improve how NHS Test and Trace works for people who are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. So that includes, different ethnicities, people from different religious backgrounds, people with disabilities, etc. So it's quite an interesting role, really. I guess day to day, I attend a lot of meetings on Teams since we're all working remotely, usually with different groups and different teams and organisations within Test and Trace, but sometimes with other departments as well, to make sure that everything is kind of aligned across government. And yeah, it's been really interesting. It's definitely been a great place to work this year. Okay, so the 3rd question I'm going to talk about is, what do I love the most about my industry? So for me, I obviously work in the civil service, which is part of the public sector, and we basically are there to deliver the aims of the government, which is in power. And I think for me, something that I really love about this work is that no matter what we do, we are always serving the country and we're always serving the public. So I guess if you're in industry, your aim would basically be to further the needs and wants of your stakeholders or your business owners. But for us, like, everything that we do is about, improving the service for the public. And I think that's something which is really powerful. And I think it's really apparent kind of in our times at the moment. Obviously, the pandemic has had such a huge impact on people across the country, and I think it's quite powerful to be able to work on something like that, which actually has an impact in people's lives. And I think this is replicated when you think about the other main issues, kind of the main political issues in our time at the moment, for example, climate change or Brexit. These kind of significant cross-cutting issues are things that you deal with day to day in government, and you have a really big impact on the future as well. So I think that's what I really enjoy the most. I also think the civil service is quite diverse. I think that it cares a lot about its people as well, and it cares a lot about, development of staff within the civil service, which I think is great and something which I really enjoy. So the next question is, what inspired you to get into where you are now? It's such a good question, because I think, like a lot of graduates, when I, was getting to my final year of university, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to go into. But I think from the very beginning, I've always known that I wouldn't really want to work in the private sector. I don't think that it's really a place for me. And I was just never really interested in any industry in particular. So I was looking more towards the kind of public sector and to the third sector as well. And I think when I was looking at kind of different grad schemes and stuff, obviously the civil service fast stream is one of the top grad schemes, and I'd heard a lot about it. Lots of my friends were applying, and I felt that it was kind of interesting, so I just decided to apply too, along with other applications to other grad schemes. I mean, it was definitely one choice out of many, but I just kept getting kind of further and further along the application process, and eventually I landed a spot on the generalist fast stream, which is kind of, it's in the name, the more general program within the fast stream. There are other more specialized ones as well. For example, if you're most interested in project delivery, or you're most interested in a career, in the Houses of Parliament or in the Foreign Office, there are kind of different avenues for that. But I got into the generalist scheme, and I thought it was a good way to kind of try a lot of different things before kind of knowing where I really wanted to kind of further my career. So I guess that's how I got into it. I liked the idea of being in a public sector role, and I think also the fast stream offers a lot of developmental opportunities, and it gives kind of really, really good career progression as well. So basically you're on the scheme for 3 or 4 years, depending on what your scheme is, and then at the end of that you get quite a big promotion. So it's just a really good way to develop your career, I think, in quite a short amount of time. So the next question is, what was my biggest obstacle working in the civil service? So I was thinking about this earlier, and I think that being on the fast stream, you basically don't really get a choice in where your postings are. Unless you have a special reason for that. For example, like, I don't know, if you have like caring responsibilities and you can't move away from a specific area, then of course you'll be given priorities to stay in that area. But if you don't have a special reason, then you might be moved to different parts of the country where you don't know an awful lot of people. And I think that can be quite difficult. So for example, I went to university in Edinburgh. I'm from Dorset, so in the southwest of England. And for my first year, I got moved to Birmingham. I didn't know anyone there. I literally didn't know a single person. I'd actually never even been there before. So that was quite a big step. But, it turned out really well. I met a lot of good people, lots of people who I'm still really, really good friends with. So I definitely think that that constant change is a really difficult part of working in the civil service as part of the civil service fast stream. And it's one of those things where, because it's a grad scheme, every single year you'll move to a different role, you do a different posting, you get moved to a different department, different subject matter. So that constant kind of learning and picking up on a new subject, you're never really the subject matter expert, because you're in a role, for the first 6 months you don't really know what you're doing, and then once you start to understand it and you're getting good at your job, you have to move on. So I think that constant change is quite difficult as well. But then I also think that just kind of stretches you a bit more, and it kind of teaches you to pick things up quite quickly and adapt and kind of develop your resilience. So I think is actually quite a positive thing, even if it doesn't always feel like that in the moment. Okay, so the next question is, what skills or qualifications does someone need to enter your sector? So this is really interesting, because I think the civil service is so broad. I mean, it literally employs every single type of person, every single type of skill set, which I think is why it's a great place, and it employs a significant amount of people across the country. So no matter whether, you're really, really good at drafting and you're really good with words, or whether you are more kind of analytical and really good with data and really good with digital skills, or I've even seen some job adverts for, tree surgeons who are hired by the civil service. So it is incredibly broad. And I think no matter what your skill set is, there will be a place in the civil service for you, which again is why it's such a huge employer. I do think though that there are some kind of core civil service skills if you are to be employed in a more traditional civil service role. So maybe something in policy or something in strategy. And I think that one of them is definitely really, really good drafting skills, which I think a lot of university students, especially if you've done humanities, I think is naturally something that's going to be as part of your skill set. So being able to kind of draft lengthy documents and being able to kind of read through a lot of complex information and distill it down into something that is user-friendly and simple for someone who's not a subject matter to read through. I think that's something which is always going to be valued. And then I think kind of the more analytical side, again, being able to look through a lot of evidence and data, no matter if that's quantitative or qualitative, and being able to distill down the key information and make recommendations. I think they are the kind of core skills which anyone would need. And then of course kind of more soft skills as well, which everyone has in the workplace, like ability to chair meetings or do presentations or make PowerPoint slide decks. I think these are the skills which you'll need no matter in which kind of sector that you work in. But I do also think that it's stuff that the skills that you kind of gain over time as well. So not everyone is going to be a brilliant presenter from the very beginning, but I think it's something that you can pick up over time. Okay, so the final question is, what advice would you give to a young aspiring individual? So I would definitely say that if you're interested in joining the public sector or the civil service or local government of some sort, I'd definitely say that if you have just graduated from uni, I think really, really try to get onto a grad scheme or maybe like do some interning during your studies as well. So for example, there's the civil service fast stream, which I'm on, which is a grad scheme which you can apply for. I think that's a really great way to get into the department, be exposed to different roles, be exposed to different departments, and try to figure out where you might want to stay in the future. Or even if you like the civil service, you might join and find that you really dislike it, in which case that would give you a great exposure and you can kind of find something else that you would prefer to do. I also think the grad schemes have really, really good developmental opportunities. There's lots of training which is given to people. And like I said previously, there's really good career progression as well. So I definitely think if you can get onto a grad scheme, I know the civil service does one. I think there's like the local government grad scheme as well. So definitely apply for all of those. There's also like internships through the civil service. So for example, the civil service summer diversity internship program. So I think that is, again, a really, really good program to apply for if you kind of meet the eligibility. Again, that would give you good exposure to different roles across the department, and it would really help to boost your CV as well. So I guess that's the kind of main tip that I would give. Just try and get onto some kind of program or some kind of scheme. But I would also say just like keep at it when you're at uni, just do as much volunteering as you can, get involved with as many activities as you can. Because I think when it gets to kind of the job application stage, what people want to know, like even if you don't have like that professional experience, people want to see you demonstrate core skills like your leadership, how you communicate and influence, how you're able to think strategically. I think they are core skills that people want to see in the application process, and they are things that you can gain from different types of volunteering, or being part of different societies, managing a project as part of your course. So I think just always try to get those experiences when you're at uni so that it can form part of your CV and kind of prepare you for future job applications as well.